it's known that you lost your funding, and the narrative exists that because of that you decided you're transitioning then. How true is that?
It's not. It's just flat out false. Anyone who's peddling that is just, it's like, you're just completely wrong. So, obviously I'd known I was trans for a while. I was coming out to friends and family, kind of the year, 2 years leading up to that. My mental health took a bit of a dark turn, so I told my performance lifestyle advisor, who was under contract from the EIS for British Cycling. So it was a UK sport, essentially UK sports staff. So I was talking with him about everything, and then a few months later, I lost my place in the programme, which was obviously really tough. It kind of came out of the blue a bit. We did ask for reasons. They're all a tiny bit wishy-washy, but yeah, I wasn't on the programme anymore.
Do you make any connection between you losing your funding and the conversation you had a few months earlier?
I honestly don't know. I don't know. That's a question that British Cycling need to ask themselves.
Once you had come out, you continued to race in men's races. In hindsight, was that the right thing to do, do you think? Because it just adds fuel to the fire, doesn't it?
It probably wasn't the right thing to do. At the time, I wanted to do it because I wanted to keep my skills sharp, because cycling is such a tactical and technical sport. It's not just physical. It's very... there's a lot that you have to do with your mind, and you have to keep that sharp if you want to be at the highest level. So I wanted to keep my technique, like cornering and stuff, and my mind and my tactics sharp. And I thought that it would put me in a good place for when I started racing with women, because I was obviously losing performance.
And one of those races in the university championships, you won.
Yes. What they haven't reported is that the day before, I come fourth in the individual pursuit, 12 seconds slower than I'd gone previously, which is obviously a massive, significant amount of time to lose. And I raced it tactically. I raced it incredibly tactically. I wasn't the strongest rider in the race. I was probably fourth or fifth strongest, but I used my head to get the best out of myself. Immediately after I came off the track, I was like, I kind of wish I hadn't done that, because I knew what was coming. I knew that it would be picked up on. So,
over the past 12 months or so, you obviously knew what the policy of British Cycling was, the inclusion policy, and you've been adhering to that in every way, reducing your testosterone levels. Can you describe what it was like when you knew, first of all, that you'd got to that place where you met their criteria and your moment was about to come?
So I wouldn't say that I was actively trying to meet the criteria set by the UCI and British Cycling. I'd say that was a consequence of the medical transition that I was beginning, because the medication that I've been taking, a consequence is that your testosterone will go down low enough to meet that criteria. So first and foremost, my transition is, for me, it's to alleviate my gender dysphoria and make me feel more at home in my body. That is the sole reason why I'm taking these drugs. But a consequence of that is that I do meet the policy at the time that was set by British Cycling and the UCI policy.
So, but you did get to that stage where the Omnium Championships were there, you'd been accepted as a competitor, and then everything changed very suddenly. Can you describe what happened then and how that impacted on you?
So, on the Wednesday before the event, we got an urgent email from the compliance team at British Cycling, basically saying we need an urgent meeting. And when you get something like that, when you get an email requesting an urgent meeting, you kind of know what's coming. It's just like, either there's been a real safeguarding issue that's been flagged, or we're going to stop you racing. And obviously it was the second. It is effectively the UCI vetoed my participation. under their rules, but it just felt like because it was so last minute. It was just really messed up, and there's just so many oversights. It feels like it wasn't. Why wasn't it checked earlier?
How did it make you feel at the time when you found out for sure that's what was happening?
It was incredibly difficult because I knew that my main goal for the season, the Commonwealth Games, was then out of the question because I couldn't race this event, and it was unlikely I was going to be able to race any international events during Welsh Cycling's set time frame for the selection. So the Commonwealth Games are gone, and I feel a real pride about being Welsh, and I really wanted to represent my country at the highest level, and that was so hard to have that opportunity to potentially be selected just ripped away from me.
So do you think the decision they took was down to public pressure as opposed to actual policy?
I think it may have played a part, but I think it was just admin error they hadn't checked, and the UCI they're a very big organisation. They take a long time to do everything. So obviously came at very last minute, but I'd say that there's potentially a lot of public pressure to stop me racing.
What did that feel like? You must have felt isolated.
Oh, incredibly. And then obviously all the communication most of the communication from British Cycling stopped. I was initially told that I could still race because there was still a policy that I was going to meet when I hit 12 months of suppressed testosterone. So there was obviously still the potential that I could race domestically, but that obviously changed as well.
So when they dropped their policy, tore it up effectively, they knew how that would impact on you, but they haven't made any contact?
No, I've had nothing from them. They said that they would be in touch about the procedure, about how they were going to make their new policy, but I haven't heard anything. So either they're not doing anything, or they're not doing what they said in their email to me, and including me in making a policy.
And what does that mean to you and others, that there isn't a policy now?
It's just, it's untenable. You can't not have a policy, because there are multiple athletes in the UK who just don't know what to do because there's no policy. We don't know what we're working towards. It's complete limbo. This doesn't just affect me. This affects other people as well, and it's not fair. It's so unfair to not have anything.
Do you think British Cycling are running scared?
I think there's a lot of public pressure to pull the policy, and I think that's why it was pulled.
And what about the UCI? They said they'd make a decision about you in 6 weeks. That didn't happen. Where are we with the UCI?
So right at the end of the 6 weeks, I think it was exactly 6 weeks from the date of which I had exhibited 12 months of suppressed testosterone. So 6 weeks after that, I got an email basically asking for more information that I needed to assess my eligibility application. So I'm now cooperating with them to give them the information that they need to continue assessing my file.
Do you get the sense that British Cycling and the UCI are just moving the goalposts?
I think maybe to some extent, but the UCI policy still is the same as it was, as it has been for 2 years now. So as of yet, they haven't moved the goalposts. There is remit for them to ask for more information if they deem it necessary. So they obviously deem it necessary, so I'll cooperate with what they ask.
Have they put a timescale on that?
At least 2 months before I know the outcome of my application.
There is quite a loud social media debate going on at the moment, and it can get very unpleasant. On one of the points that these people make, it is that you are taking potentially a place away from another woman?
I haven't taken anything. I haven't been considered for any teams or squads or races or anything. And when the time comes that I am selected or put in the pool for selection, I'll compete with other athletes as they compete with their fellow athletes for spots. It's only a certain number of people can be selected. I don't want special treatment from anyone. I just want the same opportunities as my fellow female athletes.
They make the point that they believe that you even competing against other women cyclists is unfair.
I can understand how they're feeling that way, especially athletes that I've grown up with, because I feel like because they haven't seen me much, they still view me as the same person as I was pre-transition. So they will still see me as with the performance that I had then, which I don't. I don't have that performance anymore. My performance has decreased massively across aerobic performance. I've lost more than the gap is between male and female athletes. Over explosive distances, I've gotten worse comparatively, and I am not near the top female athletes when it comes to explosive power. They're fundamentally better than I am from that standpoint, which is the same as I was pre-transition. I'm not an explosive athlete. I haven't suddenly become an explosive athlete overnight. It's just false. And there's been so many medical changes that I've seen. My blood's gotten thinner because of decreased hemoglobin, and that hemoglobin has directly influenced my aerobic performance. I am no faster compared to my fellow athletes than I was pre-transition.
Because you've been through male puberty, you have an inbuilt advantage and always will have that advantage. Do you accept that?
No, I don't.
Explain why not.
So lots of people talk about kind of body size and weird stuff about Q angle, which is obviously it's not relevant for cycling. Height isn't necessarily relevant in cycling. You get small riders winning, you get tall riders winning. There's an advantage for being smaller and lighter in most of the big races. And all of the research that's been done previously has not been done on athletes, it's been done on sedentary individuals. Many of them are flawed. They're using grip strength and lean body mass, sometimes on individuals who haven't completed 12 months of hormone therapy. So I don't see that they're not relevant. There's a number of papers that they cite and reviews that they cite, and a lot of the data that's in those papers just isn't relevant, especially to cycling. And yeah, I'm part of research that's going on. We've observed the changes over a year of hormone therapy, and I feel, and the leaders of the study feel, that any advantage that I had pre-transition is gone.
Some people would say to that any research that you do potentially could be tainted because it's not in your interests to push yourself during that research.
Firstly, they've obviously never met an elite athlete who will always get the most out of themselves. Secondly, I invite them to come and watch me doing the research, watch them take muscle cores out of my muscles, to physically cut me open and take muscle from me to store and to look at under a microscope to investigate the changes, to watch me doing a VO2 max test, to look how hard I go, to look at the line, to look at the way my oxygen and CO2 is, to show that I am giving my absolute all. It's laughable.
When everything blew up, all of a sudden, out of the blue, Boris Johnson, Nadine Dorries, the Prime Minister and Culture Secretary, came out quite categorically to say trans women shouldn't compete with women in any sport. What impact did that have on you personally and to a wider level too?
It's really strange to see probably the most famous man in Britain, talking about you, and having an opinion on something that he doesn't know anything about. And the response after that was as expected. I had threats of physical violence made against me by complete strangers online, and I'm scared a lot of the time about being who I am in public. People are always going to have an opinion about it. People are entitled to hold an opinion about it. But there's a way to go about voicing that opinion, and threatening to kneecap me is not that way.
The governing bodies in this country, for all sports, are recommended to refer to what's called the SCEGS policy, which is a body of research into inclusion, essentially. What do you make of that research?
So the research that they've cited is inherently flawed. Some of the studies that one of the papers cites are completely irrelevant to sport in general. So it's based on to say that inclusion of trans women in sport cannot be guaranteed if fairness is being prioritised. I feel like that's wrong, and they're referencing evidence which isn't applicable to sport if you're looking at 12-month testosterone suppression. And then if you look deeper into the SCEG policy, the questions are very loaded. There's a lot of transphobic dog whistles, like inside the questions. They've obviously been written with someone with an explicit agenda to push. And then there's the matter that I think a large percentage of the athletes asked were men who it doesn't affect. There were very few, if any, trans athletes asked about it. No athletes who compete on a team with trans women were asked. It's very flawed, and I don't think it's applicable to base any sort of policy against.
Has there been any stage at any time where you thought, I'm just going to race in men's races?
I can't do that. I can't race in men's anymore. It's not something that I'm prepared to put myself through again, because it was only something that, because there was a deadline on when I knew I didn't have to race with men anymore, I could manage it. But I can't do that anymore. It's not who I am.
What motivates you to keep going then?
I just want to make things better for other people, so I have to keep going. I've got the opportunity and I've to keep going, and I feel like I've got the strength to keep going and then make things better for the people who come after me.
As a role model for trans women?
I don't know if I see myself as a role model, but I would like to think that what I'm doing is helping other people and it will make things easier for the people who come after me. And that's the goal, to kind of make people feel more comfortable in who they are, and to hopefully make cycling and sport a more welcoming place for everyone. Not just trans people, not just LGBT people, but for everyone. Because sport is, from what I've seen of it, is not an inclusive space.
Is this about winning for you? Is this about medals? Or is it about just being allowed to compete?
The whole appeal of cycling as a sport for me, and sport in general, is about the struggle. The founder of the Olympic Games said that it's not the winning that counts, it's the struggle, it's the fight that you go towards that counts. And that's what I want to do. I want to fight to get the best out of myself, to get the best performance that I can do. It's not about the winning for me. Obviously I like winning, I want to win, but it's secondary to being allowed to compete, being given the opportunity to get the most out of myself on an equal playing field against people who have an equal performance to me. That's what I care about.
What would you say to those women who believe that you should never be allowed to compete against other women?
I understand how you feel, like how hard you're fighting is justified in the way that you've grown up with fewer opportunities than male athletes. I empathise with where you're coming from. Empathise why you feel potentially threatened by my inclusion, why it might feel like the patriarchal structures that govern cycling and society in general it's another thing, how you can feel it's another thing that's being pushed on you, and it's another thing you've got to fight against. But those same structures, those same attitudes are the same things that pushed me down, pushed me into the closet, that I couldn't be myself. And it's the same things that affects me. So I would ask if you can empathise with me, because I can empathise with you. I don't know if this will change anybody's mind, but that's the message I give to you.